You know, it's funny because I went to the thrift shop a couple weeks ago and I saw this same TV. And what interested me was the ports that I had in the back of it. I mean, it has like S video, VGA. I mean, like all the ports you can imagine having as a gamer. And so I passed up on it because they wanted $50 for it. So I was like, I'm not gonna pay all that. And then I just went back to the thrift shop today and I saw the same TV sitting there. I'm like, how come somebody hasn't took the TV already? So I was like, you know what, whatever. So I ended up buying it. I bought some other stuff with it too, which I am gonna try on this TV. But I think the TV is the real highlight because I want to show it off. So one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to buying stuff from the thrift shop is the stickers that they put on. But a couple strange things on the top, one of which is this Wega gate button, which I had no idea what that did until I wound up turning on the TV. But the other thing I found strange was that in 2006, apparently this cost $1,330, which I find it hard to believe just how much this TV is depreciated. But I'm going to start off with the left side, which has an S-video port, and that green port that you see on the bottom is actually a headphone jack. And if you come along to the back, you have two more S-video outputs, as well as composite, and you have a PC audio in, and if you want to hook up a soundbar, you can do it as well. And this was made in August 2005. And more bragging about how much this thing was back in 2006, which I find funny. But it also has one HDMI port and one VGA port on the top. All right, so the first order of business is to tackle the sticker with some WD-40. So I'll let that sit for a few minutes. And then for the marker residue, I went ahead and used some denatured alcohol. But the top was extremely stubborn. For some reason, it was coming off on the paper towel, but it wasn't coming off at all. So I decided to just come back to that after a little bit of scrubbing. Meanwhile, I went to check on the sticker, and it looks like it was coming off. I had to pry at it a little bit, maybe because I didn't let it sit long enough. But honestly, I was in a hurry to get this thing plugged in and powered on. So I decided to come back to the top with a Q-tip, and perhaps I can get into those grooves. Maybe I can get some of it off, but it turns out I wasn't getting anything off. So I thought maybe perhaps it was the plastic that it was on. So I tried going at it in the back, and nothing was happening at all. So I decided I wasn't going to waste any more time on it. Instead, I was just going to just give it a general wipe down. Because my whole thing is, I don't want to, get it super deep clean. I realize it's been sitting for a long time, especially at thrift shops. It's probably going to be nasty. So, because people throw away these TVs, like they just don't really care. And so I want to be able to give this thing a new home, and I want to see this thing play some games. And that's mainly the reason why I bought it. And I realized that, my Panasonic that I have, it's good for gaming, but I really like these TVs, especially because of all the ports that they have on the back. I mean, this is like literally a gamer's dream. I mean, what more can you ask for? I mean, I don't even have a TV that supports S video. But anyway, that's pretty much what it looks like, all cleaned up. So now I'm going to go ahead and hook it up, and then we're going to try some stuff on it. So before I hooked up anything to it, I just thought I might mess with it first and figure out what the hell that Wega Gate button is. And while I was doing that, I was looking through the owner's manual, and one of the things that I found out was that this TV actually weighs 30 pounds. And I was curious as to know, I was actually going to put it on the scale myself until I looked at the owner's manual and saw, oh, it's 30 pounds. But yeah, it turns out the Wega Gate button is actually kind of like a little menu. So, this is a TV from 2005. So, obviously people are going to be using a lot of cable back then. So it just kind of makes it convenient for you to select between your different channels and stuff like that. But one thing I found weird was like the external inputs, which for some reason the first two are named cable box, and I'm not sure why. But your settings is pretty much like your run-of-the-mill basic settings. I mean, there's nothing really much to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, the TV does support HDMI. It does have a resolution at 1366 by 768, which is 720p resolution, which is actually still acceptable to this day. And for 2005, I mean, that was mind-blowing. And it's especially mind-blowing considering how heavy this damn thing is. I'm surprised I didn't break my back trying to carry it up to my apartment. And I even thought it was like 40, 50 pounds. So alongside the TV, I also managed to pick up this light gun. And one of the things that surprised me about it was that it had an infrared on it, which kind of reminds me of like those old school light guns. And it also reminds me of what they did later with like the NES Zapper and the Sega Light Phaser, where they added the orange tip to prevent people from thinking it was like a real gun. So I'm just curious to see if it would work on an LCD. So I decided to load up the batteries, and that's me struggling to get them in. But once I do get them in, this thing doesn't want to work properly. Somehow I managed to get past the first screen. And I don't know how, but I've been messing with it for a few minutes, and I just couldn't get it to work right. So I'm just going to save this for another episode. So, of course, with like any RF signal, it looks blurry and doesn't really look that good. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing with like a modern flat screen. So, this isn't a CRT, I assure you. But one of the things that I found weird was that there was like some ghosting going on. And to be honest, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was the 2600. I didn't know if it was the cord or if it was the games. I didn't know. And it kind of annoyed me a little bit, to be honest, when I was playing games. But out of the 8 games that I got from the Thrift Shop also, I only managed to really enjoy 3 of them. Because I know 2 of them require paddles, and I don't have the paddles. So I didn't even understand the other games, like how to play them. So the other one that I am playing is bowling, which I was dead ass trying to get a strike, and I managed to get a strike. So after that, I put that away, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try some human cannonball. And if you ever play like paper toss or like Angry Birds, it kind of reminds me of that. So your objective is to shoot a person into like a basket. So it really depends on like the wind speed and the angle in which you're shooting them at. So that's pretty cool. But that ghosting, I got pretty tired of it. I said, you know what? I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And I'm going to throw in some Pac-Man to see if it perhaps does the same thing. And it turns out that it does. But interestingly enough, when I switch it to black and white, the ghosting goes away. So I then decided to hook it up to my CRT to see if the ghosting would appear. And it turns out that it actually looks much better on the CRT and that there's no ghosting at all. So my guess is it's probably the TV itself. And I don't think it's really that good with RF signals, to be honest. But on the flip side of things, S-Video actually looks really good on this TV. I was almost blown away. It almost looked like eye candy, to be honest. And so, having the N64 hooked up, playing some Mario Party 3, it's been a minute. And I've actually had some fun until it reset it on me twice, I'm not going to lie. I mean, the computer is just so cheating, man. And, here I thought I was going to be winning these mini games. And I mean, I have the computer on normal. And look what Luigi's bitch ass does. I mean, look at this. This guy gets a hole in one. I almost threw my controller and just walked away. But I was like, no, I got to do it for the video. And it's funny because I tried to like get the star twice. I was close to getting it twice. And for some reason, the computer kept nailing my ass. So I'm not going to lie. I thought I lost this footage until I fucking seen this shit. I was dying. I was like, there's no way. This guy just uses metronome and fucking... You know what? I said, you know what? That's like, I'm going to just use substitute while he does that dumbass. So I'm running Composite on the PS2. And interestingly, I've tried running Gran Turismo 2 using Component. And the thing is that it works. It's just that it lags really bad. So, I mean, Composite, I have no complaints about it. It looks pretty good. I mean, if I'm paying $1,300 for this TV, I mean, it better not disappoint. I mean, most people were playing PS2 around that time back then. So, but yeah, I am playing Tekken 3, and Nina manages to kick my ass, which is great. And I'm like trying to figure her out, although I'm not really that great at Tekken, since Jin is my homie, since he has that dragon punch that his pops taught him. Oh, I seen that anime, alright. Hihachi was kicking his ass every single day, But look at this. I managed to get a perfect off of lay. And I don't know how. I was just mashing buttons. So to wrap things up, I decided to hook up the PS4. And it honestly doesn't look that bad. And for a TV that's 18 years old, I mean, this is kind of like the TV that you would probably see on like the side of the road, or if like, somebody was throwing it out, they would have been like, here, here's your free TV. And you could actually like get by with it. And it really doesn't look that bad. So I wanted to test out a bunch of like the different outputs that it supports, kind of like RF and composite and VJ and stuff like that. And actually, I didn't get to test VJ because I simply don't have the time for it. But overall, this is actually a pretty good TV. And the one thing that actually surprises me is that it has S-video ports on it, which I've never even seen an LCD TV with S-video on it. I just thought that was for like CRTs, but so, I mean, I got to, test out its strengths and weaknesses. I mean, for one, obviously, it's not really that great with RF. It actually does pretty okay with HDMI. So, like I mentioned before, this has a resolution of 720p. So, HD isn't going to look the best compared to like a modern flat screen where it's like now you have 4K. So, they do a lot better in that aspect. But, I mean, you got to give it credit for what it's due. I mean, this is like one of the first TVs to support HDMI. So around that time, that's when they were transitioning. So it was still kind of new. So I'm not gonna, mock it for that. But on the upside though, the S-video and the component quality, as well as the composite as well, I think it does best in those outputs. And, simply because a lot of people were still using those back then, especially. But I think it's absolutely worth it if you're a gamer. And I even think you can even use this TV as your daily driver if you want to use it for like Netflix, or if you want to put it in the room. I think it's a great little TV. So that about wraps up for this video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I definitely have more coming. So I look forward to seeing you guys later.